I tend to like to have a theme to speak on, and I'm kind of drawing a blank this week. But what I feel like I want to share today is a little bit of a check-in as to where I am on my own journey. And if you've been following me this year, it's been quite quite a journey, quite an adventure of traveling and moving, and so many different things have come up. And so today I really want to check in about kind of what I feel like I've learned in the last 8 months, 8.5 months. It feels like it's almost like that 9-month gestation period. And I really do feel like this year has changed me. And as someone that believes in walking my talk, I want to share a little bit about the movement from the mind to the heart, the movement from the fear paradigm to the trust paradigm, I'm going to call it. And what is life really like when we're stepping in flow? You know, we have this idea of what flow is, but what actually is flow? And I've touched upon it over these months, but I want to just reflect and share what's come up for me, and hopefully be a guide or spark some kind of inspiration that can support you in maybe shifting into this way of living too, not because I believe I have the one right way, but because I can feel the liberation of shifting into a different state of being. And that's what's happening right now. We're going from a mental construct society to dropping into a state of being, that life is an experience and it requires us to be in being. And then actually, if we're in the mind too much, we really inhibit ourselves. And I watched a beautiful documentary last night about really the power of the heart. You know, science finally catching up with what so many mystics have known for eons. So I want to bring that piece in as well, because that's part of this shift of living from the mind to now dropping into the heart and recognizing that the brain, the heart brain, is actually the most powerful brain of our entire body. So let's dive in. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. So really my journey started a year ago, actually almost a year ago. Things started to really change, or I began to initiate the change about a year ago. And if I kind of reflect back, and I think it's a really helpful thing to do in life, because we tend to always want to be forward moving and we kind of forget how far we've come along the journey. I went from real concentrated focus to the determination of I'm going to change my life. I'm going to change my life. I am really stepping into the role of co-creator, knowing that I am co-creating, but that I'm actually really going to show up within my role of that. And that's an interesting one, because I think I've spoken a little bit to this of like, how much are we actually in quote unquote control of, and how much is kind of fated or destined, or, how much do we let go and surrender to and allow ourselves to just receive? And I think it really, the conclusion that I'm coming to is that I think we're actually always being guided, that we are the vehicle, as I spoke about last week. We are the vehicle, the vessel, the conduit for our soul, which is driving us. And you could say source, which is, the greatest driver of it all. But it's not about being in control or not in control. It's about engaging. It's about being present. And I spoke last week about how just having a meditation practice for me every morning, the consistency of that. And it's not, when I say meditation practice, really what I'm referring to is being in stillness, being in silence, being in a state of being. Yes, I might do breathing exercises. I might do grounding. I do a little bit of the bliss technique. I do the infinity way. I kind of intuitively bring different things and then my own, right? So some of it can be a visualization that brings about certain feelings, that is really about getting my frequency up and really feeling into, tuning into what it is that I'm magnetizing into my life. But also primarily, the whole thing around raising our frequency is actually the quickest way is, can you be in a state of gratitude? Can you be in a state of appreciation, but not falsely, right? What I find about connecting in with myself and being in the silence and in the being, it feels so incredibly comforting, because the way that I see it is, this is connecting to our essence, and our essence is home. So what we're doing essentially when we sit in, I don't even want to call it meditation, when we sit in being, when we sit with ourselves, what we're doing is we're inviting ourselves to come home every single time we do that. And if we do that on a daily basis, and for me, the easiest time is to do it as soon as I wake up, sit up in bed and begin. But I can really feel that that's cultivated such a, not just a strong relationship with myself, but just, my body being in the present moment, and then connecting to, my guides. It opens up that whole world. And through that, as I've shared, it opens up also the synchronicities, and you see the magic, and you recognize that the veil is very thin. But when I look back at this process, I can see the determination of I'm going to fully engage. So I am being guided, but I'm going to fully engage with my presence. That's the engagement that we can bring to the table. I'm present. I'm open to receiving. So I'm a receptor. And through that, the guidance can then come through, and then I can choose to take action upon that guidance. I can choose to take action upon where my heart is guiding me towards, what it's speaking to me about, and there's all sorts of offshoots of that, right? Going into our intuition, going into dreams, going into signs, going into all sorts of things. But actually, I think really at the core is, can we be still enough to listen, receive, engage, and then take action? So it went from this very focused, okay, I'm in it. I've got 2 feet in, and I'm going to be a part of creating change. But as I am taking action, I'm taking all the steps. When I began a year ago, I didn't know where the hell I was going. I didn't know where the hell it was all leading to. And actually, even from the point of where I made that decision in August, it wasn't until I think November, with many kind of almost there, nope, not there, almost there, nope, not there. And, it's the reason why I say this is a journey is because it's not, you don't just get to a point where you're like, this is what I'm going to do. And then it's a straight shot and it's totally easy and easeful. There are waves. There are peaks and troughs. And I think the more that we accept that this is life, just like our emotions, just like the weather. I in this documentary that I was listening to, that I watched last night, Anita Moorjani, who, if you haven't read her book, Dying to Be Me, I really recommend reading it, because it's an incredible story and a beautiful reminder of who we truly are. And, so she had this near-death experience, and she really saw the other side and understood just the immense amount of unconditional love that is there, and that this is all just an experience. And she came back and was basically told, go back, but do it without fear. Do it fearlessly. But she said, life still happens. Life is still life. There's things still come up. But she says now what she does is she does not suppress her emotions. Because everything on the other side is a felt experience. You could say that we manifest through instant thought, but feeling, because what's happening, the way that I would describe it, I'm putting this in my own words. So basically what this documentary was showing was that the magnetic field of our heart is so powerful. I think the magnetic field of our brain is 1 inch and our heart is 3 feet. So that's a huge difference, right? And they're saying that actually the heart picks up through the magnetic field. It almost can preempt, it knows that they have the tests of this, what's going to happen next. And it feels it through the magnetic field, which of course is outside of our body. The heart is literally a brain. It's not a metaphor. It has all sorts of neurological pathways and a nervous system and all of these things. So it gets absorbed, the information gets absorbed into the heart, and then the heart actually sends far more messaging to the brain than the other way around. So we've had a society that really has deified and put the mind on the pedestal, where actually the heart is a far more potent, powerful conductor. Let's put it that way. Mind is a great tool, great servant, if it's trained in the right way, right? So the way that I would describe it, and the reason why I think feeling is so powerful is because it's connecting us into our magnetic field. And if you want to get into the quantum physics of it all, that everything, we are in the field. And when we move into like the wave from the particle is the density, right? It's hard to shift things when we're in the density of the particle. But when we're in the lighter frequency and density of the wave, that's where, quantum leaps can happen, because all of a sudden manifestation or creation or whatever you want to call it is happening on a very different speed. It's outside of time space continuum. But anyway, let me hone it back in a little bit. This is all interesting research to kind of, study upon if it piques your curiosity. But if I were to just really simplify it, I think when we are in the resonance of our heart, in that magnetic field, things happen through a feeling and through a knowing. I talked about this last week, that it's not knowledge of, reading a ton of books. That's wonderful. But true knowing, wisdom is in the body. It's a state of being. It's an embodiment. It's a gnosis. And actually another part of the documentary was this young girl that was doing this work. I don't know what they called. Actually, my daughter's done this, which is called extraocular vision, but this was a little bit different. But basically what these children learn to do is they have blindfolds on, like you cannot see through it at all. And what they're doing is they're training themselves to see not through their eyes, but see through the heart, see through the magnetic field, see through feeling. So they learn to feel colors. They learn to feel shapes, and feel, I mean, energetically. And so basically through the training, they get to the point where, through the blindfold, if someone shows like, the person shows a color, they'll know what color that is. Or what, if they're feeling a piece of paper and there's a drawing on it, they'll be able to feel, oh, that was a shark. What color, it's really amazing. It's truly, truly amazing and miraculous. And you kind of think, even the mother was like, there's a part of me that's skeptical. Like, how is this possible? And the only reason why I'm skeptical is because I haven't had the experience myself, right? We believe things by the experience that we have. But if we can just take it as an example, we've limited ourselves to believing that we can only perceive the world through our eyes, ears, smell, touch, taste, when actually there's so much more. There's so much more. And for any of you that are empaths, or any of you that are energetically based, we're all energetically based, but some more energetically sensitive, you'll know that to be true, because you will feel the environment before you even get to know it, right? You walk into a room, you will feel the energy of the people and the room. So but this is a whole sense that we have forgotten, essentially, that we've been disconnected from. And there's a multitude of reasons as to why that's happened. But I think that as we're moving through this shift right now, it's about remembering to come back to our innate abilities. And this is one that is really, really powerful. So in my own experience, I went from viewing this whole journey I've always been very body-based and intuitive, but I can also really get stuck in my mind. And I definitely went through a period where I was trying to figure it out. Like my brain hurt. I was trying to figure it out. Where am I going to go? How am I going to do it? How am I going to afford it? I can't afford it. I can't do this. How am I going to get out of here? I felt like I was a little bit in a prison. And I mean, when I say my brain hurt, it actually literally hurt. Like I would get really overwhelmed and it would feel like I'm trying to put a jigsaw puzzle together and I just can't do it. And you're trying to figure it out and it's so frustrating, it's putting a square peg in a hole and you're like, it's not working, but I need to figure this out. I need to figure this out because I need something to change. And then if you followed my journey, I'm not going to go into the whole story, but actually one of the biggest turning points was changing a belief of mine. It was changing a belief of mine and how I was speaking about certain things, what vocabulary I was using. And the moment I decided I'm not going to believe that anymore, I'm just going to drop that belief and I'm not going to use that language anymore. And 2 days later, that's when the big shift happened. From that point, I again, there's peaks and troughs, there's ebbs and flows, and you have to remember this, that even when you're on the path, some people think that, oh, I'm on the right path if there are no obstacles. No. You're on the right path if the feeling is right. You might still have fear. There might still be challenges. That doesn't mean you're going in the wrong direction. That just means that's life. Right? You can take a hike. It's easy to use the metaphor of a mountain. You can take a hike up the mountain and, you might stub your toe on a rock or, get really tired because it's strenuous, or maybe you're in the beating sun at one moment and then you get a nice, patch of trees and there's shade, but you don't think, oh, I'm going in the wrong direction. You're still climbing up the mountain. And when you get to the top of the mountain and you see the vista, you're like, wow, how beautiful. I'm so glad I did that. But it wasn't like, oh, it was all easeful and therefore it was the right path. No, a path is a path. So we need to kind of normalize these things, right? And I just want to drop in really quickly I want to loop back to what I was saying about Anita Moorjani, about her not suppressing feeling anymore. Because there's no judgment when you recognize that everything is through feeling and that it's a natural part of being human. It's actually a natural part of existing. We just have emotions, stronger emotions in this form, human form, and in this density. But it's all there for a reason. It's all part of the vocabulary of being human. It's all part of the vocabulary and vernacular of being human, and in this experience and in this existence and in this embodiment. There's no right, wrong, good, bad, right? So she says she no longer suppresses it and she just allows herself to feel it. And this is what I've been speaking to for like 15 years. It's like there's nothing wrong with the feeling, even if it's anger. What is it speaking to you about? What is it telling you? How is the energy needing to move through you? But the suppression is what makes people sick. The suppression is what creates barriers and obstacles that are unnecessary. As I've spoken to, the unnecessary suffering is I'm going to push down my humanity and say, nope, that's not good, or I don't like it, or it's too uncomfortable, or it's too painful. But a lot of it is the way that we perceive it. Remember that I shared that when I was pregnant and I was envisioning my birth, I never put it in the context that it's going to be painful. It was intense, but it was not painful. But it's because it's of how I perceived it, right? So perception is super, super powerful, and our beliefs are super powerful, as I've talked till the cows come home about. So allowing ourselves, like the more that we allow and normalize feelings, emotions, and that the journey, the path, the climb is going to be a little bit of everything. The more that we normalize and recognize, oh, there's nothing wrong. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not going in the wrong direction. Then we can relax a little bit. So part of the relaxation is the movement from the mind to the heart is getting out of the judgment, because judgment, I think, is our biggest inhibitor. It's our biggest kind of disconnector from our true nature. As I spoke about last week, judgment is the opposite of love. So when we get out of that judgmental space and we just go, yeah, this is just the human experience. I'm just going to be with what arises when it arises. Then we can relax a little bit more. And as we relax, we can drop down a little bit more, and we recognize we don't have to figure out so much. So for me, the big shift was I changed my belief, I changed my vocabulary, I changed my perspective. Then 2 days later, the shift came in, and then that propelled me into a direction. And I had two streets that I could go down to. And again, I could have really tried to battle in my mind of, God, what decision? Do I go here or do I go there? Do I go here or do I go there? And what I actually decided to do was ask for a sign. Before going to bed, it's like, I'm going to ask for a sign. Tell me which direction to go in. And then this is where you have to let it go, and you have to become a receptor. You have to be willing to receive it in a way that you're not expecting it to. You put out the signal, you allow the message to come in the way that it wants to come in. So you have to let go of control. And so this was how the next day, in the middle of a conversation with a woman that I hadn't seen or spoken to in 10 years, she happened to mention that she was dating a guy from Mexico. And I was like, okay, there's the direction, right? So then what you do is you follow the step-by-step breadcrumb path that life is leading you on. Yes, it would be lovely to have the whole picture. Like, ba-ba, ta-da, here's the whole picture. This is where you're going. This is what it's going to look like. These are the steps you're going to take. That's not how I've experienced life at all. It really is step by step, crumb piece by crumb piece that your soul has led, put out for you to guide you back home and to guide you through the experience that you want to have, or your soul wants to have in this lifetime as the unique being, personality that you are in this lifetime. So I still, I was in this, like, I always have kind of a theme of the year that comes up intuitively. And this year has definitely been not just trust and surrender, but radical trust, radical faith and surrender. And what I mean by radical is it's like to the exponential degree, of really letting go. And so when you decide that you want to let go of something, when you decide, like, I want to let go of living in the construct of fear, I want to let go of the paradigm of trying to control everything, or having this belief system that I need to be in control of everything. And, again, we live in a society that wants to control everything. It wants to be God. It wants to be more powerful than nature itself. It wants to control people and things and outcomes. And that's a very imprisoning way of life, because what it strips and deprives us of is the beautiful synchronicity that happens when we're in harmony with life itself, with nature itself, with consciousness itself, with the very essence of who we are and what all of creation is made of. And that is beautiful. Like, the word that comes to mind is it's like silk. It feels like silk. Whereas, I don't know, the way society is run, it's like styrofoam. It's like nails on a tarmac, it's not fluid. It's not gentle. It's not soft, right? It's inducing a tremendous amount of fear, worry, control, restriction, all of these things. It's a type of enslavement. It's an enslavement of consciousness. And that's why, if some of you kind of follow these terms, this is a battle on consciousness. This is a war of consciousness. Consciousness is at the root of it all. So, but the thing is when you decide, okay, I want to consciously and actively let go of that way of living. I don't want to live like that anymore. It's like when I chose I'm not going to believe this belief anymore, and I'm not going to use that vocabulary anymore. We do get to choose. We do have the power to choose how we want to perceive life, and in what kind of frame do we want to create within. But when you decide to drop a paradigm, it's also all of it is going to come up, because we have to see it before we can let it go. Because if we've suppressed anything, and sometimes it's not even what we've suppressed, it's what our ancestors have suppressed, what the collective has suppressed. We're not always moving through what is ours alone as individuals, but what is ours as a whole. but it will come up. And so, I remember there was fear, there was excitement, there was anxiety about going to Mexico, even just the journey there. There were some things that I had made a decision that wasn't really my decision, and I really regretted it after. And so the way getting there was just a bit of a ball ache, to put it bluntly. But you get through it, but then you learn, oh, I'm never going to do that again, and I'm going to listen to my intuition instead. But there was excitement and there was trust. But the first week that I was in Mexico, I have never experienced so much anxiety. I don't know why. I was in a lovely place, but it was everything kind of around the fear of being there, and people saying that it's, I think when you're behind two gated communities, like not just one, but two, you kind of are like, well, why is this so patrolled? Like, what is on the outside, right? And it I think psychologically it's really damaging. It's really detrimental. So whatever it was, but also I was propelling myself, I was throwing myself into just such a huge unknown. And so it brought up, I went through a lot of different stages of fear and anxiety, but then also amazing bliss and joy and freedom and expansion. And so I was feeling the contraction, expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction, expansion. And what's interesting as I'm saying that is it's kind of, it's like labor. You have a contraction, or I prefer the word surge, which that's the intensity, right? Like it might be like a minute of intensity. That's the contraction. And then out of that, there's the expansion. And literally your cervix is expanding, right? And you are birthing life through this contraction, expansion, contraction, expansion. And consciousness and life is forever expanding, but just part of the ebb and flow is that contraction, expansion, inhale, exhale, right? And again, I just want to reiterate it because it's so important. That is the flow of life. And if you can accept and allow it and not judge it and not see it as good or bad, then you're not going to go through the pain of, I'm having a bad day, my life is just falling apart and I'm doing it wrong, or I'm going in the wrong direction, or something must be wrong. The wrong. No, you're just having a down day. That's okay. Can you be with it? Because if you go to the judgment or the fear or the worry or the anxiety, we're abandoning our actual experience. And our experience, all it needs is love. It might be bloody uncomfortable, but if you stay with it, it will shift. And I shared that too, some weeks ago when I went through a day where I was like, oh, my state was hard. And I don't even think it was just mine. But it was like very uncomfortable, very odd the whole day, moments of feeling very lonely and down and then sad. And then all of a sudden it was like being with it all day long. And I had no distraction. It was my last day off, and I brought myself to the sea in the afternoon after my work, and I just sat in it. And then by the evening, it shifted and I could come into a place of gratitude for the sunset, gratitude for the sea, gratitude for even watching, these couples that were like in love walking past me, or these, So it again, the more that you can allow, it will move through you. The suppression keeps us stagnant. The suppression keeps us dense. The suppression keeps us in contraction, right? So recognize that there will always be a contraction, expansion kind of flow, wave, if you will. And if you can ride that wave, it's going to be much more easeful. You're going to save yourself from a lot of unnecessary suffering. So as the year unfolded, I can look back and go, God, there were so many different moments of oscillating between trusting and controlling. Trusting, and when I say controlling, what actually I mean is like I'm going into fear and I'm trying to figure it out. Where am I going to go to next? Where am I going to live next? Oh my God, I don't have a home. I have to move out in like 5 days. Where am I going to live? I'm not going to survive. All of that stuff, all of the fear, the instinctual fear, the first root chakra fear. Right. And then even after my trip in Mexico, and then I went back to live with my mom for a month to stay with her. And then it's like, okay, I don't want to be in Mexico. Where do I go to next? And there was still all of the sorting out. But every point that I arrived to where there was that I like the analogy of the slingshot, which it's like you have to pull back, pull back, pull back, which is tension, 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 in order to be released and then propelled forward. The tension part sucks. I'm not going to lie, it sucks. But then there's that point of release and propelling forward. And all of those moments they happened when I let go of trying to figure it out. It happened when I let go of being solely in my mind, trying to fit the square peg into the hole. When I'm trying to put the jigsaw puzzle together and I don't have all the pieces and I'm getting frustrated. It's when I let go of the mind and I came into the heart, into the magnetic field of the heart, and into that place of radical trust. Like, okay, I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to know how, but I need to connect to what my heart truly desires. I need to connect to the feeling, which is part of the magnetic field of what I want to experience. And then things would open up. Then there would all of a sudden be an intuition. And that happened so many times, again and again and again and again, that now I feel like, oh, okay, I feel like I've really learned it. And so now, most recently, I had about a little over 2.5 month stint of staying in one place, which after, having moved out since December and packing and all of this stuff since last September, was just like such a relief. I was like, oh God, and I had a moment where I was like, oh, but I have to move out, for August 1st. Where am I going to move to? And I could feel a little bit of that anxiety coming back in. But then it was the reminder, like, just trust. You've learned enough times now to just trust. And what if I just chose, I don't want to worry anymore? It doesn't actually help me. It doesn't serve me. It doesn't resolve things. It doesn't make it better. It doesn't draw me to any kind of conclusion. If anything, it inhibits me more. It makes my experience very uncomfortable in a way that I think is unnecessary suffering. And it stops me from that flow. Right? So flow isn't that everything is easeful. It's that I'm not resisting the flow of the river. I'm not resisting the flow of the river. Sometimes the river will be smooth. Sometimes it will be choppy. Sometimes it will go around bends. Sometimes it's a straight shot. But the flow means I am letting go of resistance. I'm softening into it, letting go of the tension, and I'm going with the flow, right? And so something did show up. Right? And a part of me is like, oh, okay, it's only for a month and it's quite expensive. And there was one night in between where I'm going to have to find a place, which is kind of like, why is this happening? Why is there always one point of challenge? And then again, I checked in with myself. Okay, change that belief. And so I started to say, transitions are easeful for me. And the moment I did that, later that night, the woman that was the kind of the quote unquote landlord of the place that I was in, that was connecting me to this other place, was like, oh, you can stay with us. You can stay with us. You can sleep on the sofa that night. So then it was sorted. Okay, I don't have to, go and spend a stupid amount of money, which I couldn't spend on a hotel. And it's like, I didn't have camping stuff. I didn't, I don't know enough people to ask if I can sleep on their couch. So it was like, it was resolved, but it was me changing my belief, getting out of the mind and worry and fear paradigm construct and coming into a place of trust. And then even further, like when it came close to the move, because I was really shifting my belief systems and making an active choice to engage and being like, I'm taken care of. Transitions are easeful. This move doesn't have to be stressful. It doesn't have to be tiring. It doesn't have to bring the anxiety in. Like, what if I trusted that everything is bringing me to the place that I need to be in, just beautifully orchestrated? I am the vessel. I'm the vehicle. I'm the conduit, right? But my soul is guiding me. Source is guiding me. My guides, my angels, my ancestors are guiding me. And I'm in constant daily conversation with all of those. Then, the packing was very easeful. Like both my daughter and I were like, wow, we did that so calmly. There was only one point in the morning where I got a little bit stressed, but it was fleeting. So it's like, okay, little bit of residue of the old reaction. But it was very calm. And I was like, wow, this is nice to be able to do it like this. and all parts of it. And then funnily enough, I still was a bit like, oh, I don't really want to sleep on the couch tonight. And, it's like I'm kind of gearing up to I might not sleep very well. And then we have to be out all day the next day and wait until the next place is clean and available. But I was like, okay, but just this is what it is. This is the experience that I'm having right now. Like, can I just trust it? Can I just let go? Can I not resist? And then we had to be out of the house. And so we were just at the sea all day. And then like towards the end of the day, and I was quite tired at this point because it'd been a hot, hot day. And the woman, my neighbor that, was the landlord, so to speak, was like, actually, there's been a change. You can move into the apartment tonight. But I knew it was going to be a lot later because I had to finish cleaning this one. And then they had to go and finish, cleaning the other one. But there you go. Like I was kind of really desiring to just be in the new place already and to be in my bed and to be able to sleep there the next, the morning, to sleep in and just to land. And it happened. It happened. And it happened, I believe, because I let go of worrying about it, being in fear, trying to control. It was really like that radical trust and surrender. Like, okay, I trust that I'm being guided and supported. And I also trust that, if I was meant to stay on the couch, I would have stayed on the couch. And, then that would have been another lesson and experience, and like, let go of the resistance. Let go of the resistance. So the moral of the story, where I've arrived to, and I feel like it's a continual practice, but I think like anything, like what I speak to with my clients is it becomes eventually second nature. In the beginning, it really is like consciously, actively. Sometimes it takes the energy to go against the grain. You're letting go of old identities, old belief systems, old patterns and stories and narratives, and you're making the conscious choice to choose differently. And then you have to show up differently. And sometimes that's easeful, and sometimes it takes energy and effort, and it takes discipline, and it takes doing it over and over and over and over again. And then the more you do it, the more second nature it becomes, the more innate it becomes, and then you don't even think about it, and it becomes a natural state of being. So I feel like I'm getting to a point where it's becoming a more natural state of being, because if I think back to even, let's say, the beginning of May, if I were still in that embodiment, I would be like, it's August 5th. I don't know where I'm going to be September 1st. And I will have moved about 20 times, and I'm really ready for my house and my roots, but it might not come, and maybe it'll come in September. It might not come until October. Who knows, as people are saying that, it's hard to find permanent housing kind of in the heat of tourist season, but I'm not worrying about it. 3 months ago, I would have been like, ooh, the anxiety is coming in. I don't have any anxiety right now. Maybe in 2 weeks' time, I'll let you know. But I'm actively making the choice of like, that doesn't serve me. It doesn't help me. So I'm going to let go of that. And what if I radically trusted? And what if I just came into this state of being where I am in the wisdom and resonance of my heart? And knowing that that magnetic field is so vast and so powerful and so potent, and that the more that I live in fear and worry and anxiety, I am taking away from this experience. I'm taking away from our birthright of abundance and freedom and joy, and of receiving the magic that comes through us when we give ourselves the permission to be receptive and to just get out of our own way. So, watch this space. We'll see how it unfolds. But, the wisdom that I feel like I've garnered from this year is really the gift I've received is a state of being. It's that like 9-inch journey from head to heart, and giving more focus to my heart than my head. To not let the mind, which can go into all sorts of illusions, delusions, fear, what ifs, it can do all of that if it's not lovingly trained well, right? So now I can use it as a tool, but I'm dropping my center of gravity out of the mind and into my heart. And the more that I can, even as I speak now, I can feel it. I can feel the field in my heart. I can feel the feeling of love, of peace. It's very peaceful. Doesn't mean I still don't have my moments of frustration and anger and irritability and all of that stuff. But I can more quickly return home. I can more quickly remember and to come into that. And then this feeds into my meditation and the embodiment and the expansion that I'm feeling. It really opens up a whole, not just a door, but like a multidimensional amount of doors, which is really exciting and magical and interesting. You know, it makes me very curious. So the invitation today is to, I think intentions are very powerful. So you get to choose if you want to set the intention of switching the paradigm of your existence, the construct of your existence and your experience of this life being you. Do you find yourself still in a state of fear, worry, anxiety, projecting future thoughts, trying to control things? Do you enjoy that? And if the answer is no, then are you willing to take that journey down into your heart and to begin perceiving life from a very, very different view, angle, perspective? One thing that the gift of traveling and having moved 20 times is that I literally see through a different window, both literally and figuratively. And the gift of it is it's made me very adaptable and resilient, but it allows me to see life and experience myself through a different angle. And each angle expands me further and further and further. And I think it gives me a greater sense of compassion. And I think this is what's the beauty of traveling and, taking in different cultures and seeing that existence and consciousness and even just people, humanity, culture is so different. You get to see through different eyes, and that is a beautiful thing. And yes, it means it stretches us outside of our comfort zone, but it expands us and it evolves us, and that's really a beautiful thing. So the invitation is, are you really willing to let go, lovingly let go of the old construct, paradigm, view, perspective, belief system, pattern, story, narrative, identity, and fall into a very different embodiment? Do you have the willingness to commit and dedicate yourself to that? And actually this past week, my website went down. It was a whole flop mistake by my hosting server, and I essentially have lost my my website. But the day before, I had a thought of like, God, I'd really like to just start my website from scratch and really write something that is in much more alignment of who I am and what I am today and the type of person that I want to work with, and actually really shifting the focus of what I want to do in my work. And then the next day, I found out that my website was crashed. I couldn't even get into my WordPress. And it's like, oh, be careful what you wish for. But in this sense, I really took it as a sign. I was like, okay, this is the opportunity. Like, what am I going to do in the meantime? I'm not going to have anything up. How will people find me? But again, come into trust, come into faith, come into your heart, not into your mind. Don't try and figure this out. And then some days later, I went to go sit down I was like, okay, I'm going to start writing new content for my website. And I still haven't figured out the hosting and all of that stuff. And, then I have to create the website, all of these things, which I do everything on my own. But I sat and I must have channeled like 3,000 words in, I don't know, it was a very short amount of time, felt like 20 minutes. And I'm writing and I was like, this is more like a book than a website. And I was like, but why can't it be the homepage of my website? Why can't it be read like a book? Because actually I'm really dedicated now to wanting to work with people that want to go on a journey. I'm not going to do one-offs. I'm not going to work on just anything. It's a true journey of people that are ready to commit and be dedicated for a certain period of time to take that journey back home to who they truly are. And I've always worked around authenticity, but now I'm really honing into a very specific journey. And part of that is the willingness to let go of an old identity. And it takes true courage And it takes true dedication and commitment and self-responsibility and sovereignty and all of these things. But it's beautiful because there's a whole new rush of energy that is moved through me. So I'm just kind of putting that out there because I think all of this is, whether you work with me or you work with someone else or you're on your own journey and you don't feel you need external guidance, but are you willing to take that journey, knowing that you're going to traverse through different landscapes? But are you dedicated to yourself? To yourself first and foremost. Are you dedicated to walk along that path and to come home to yourself? So this is a homecoming. All of this is a homecoming. And I do believe that part of dropping out of the mind and into the heart and recentering our center of gravity is how we're evolving right now. We're coming back home to the essence of who we are. And a lot of people will say that consciousness, the soul, doesn't reside in the mind. It rests right behind the heart. So that's the invitation. It's just planting the seed. Do you want to go on this journey? Do you want to drop into a totally different state of being and embodiment and return to the essence of who you are? Are you willing to let go of the old and step into not just the new, but actually who you've always been? And then if you're interested in changing the world, this is how you do it. You do it by a state of being, through a state of being, through the way you show up and through the way you perceive life. And they were talking about this in the documentary as well, that they were doing all sorts of, not experiments, but tests and the coherence of when an individual was in their heart, the coherence of their heart, how all of their heartbeats, when there was a group spread all around California, how they all synced. And then it was also syncing with the magnetic field of the earth. And so it just showed, it proved the interconnectedness of all things. And so if you want to change the world, if you change your magnetic field, you change the magnetic field of the earth, you will change the world. It's all energy, my friends, which is beautiful because it shows we have so much more power than we believe. Right? But we got to get away from the distraction, get out of the mind, drop into your heart, and you will change your very reality. So there's the seed, there's the invitation. And as always, take it or leave it as feels right for you, and loving you from afar. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.